Hi, this is a pre-recorded lecture on direct and indirect speech under transformation of sentences prescribed by Mangalore University as compulsory foundation course in English for first semester BBA session number 21. Let's look at how to transform a sentence from direct to indirect speech. Have you observed the speech patterns closely in your day-to-day conversations? Certain sentences are dialogues, right? Where actual words are uttered by the speakers, whereas some are the narrations of the speaker to the listener regarding the course or substance of action. The learning objectives of this session is to recognize the different structures of direct and indirect speech and to enable them transform from direct to indirect speech. The session outcome is learners are intended to learn the rules for transformation of sentences from direct to indirect speech. Now let's look at some of the rules to keep in mind while transforming a direct sentence into an indirect sentence. When we quote actual words of a speaker, we can call that sentence as direct speech. In the written form, inverted commas are used in direct speech. On the other hand, when we tell or report what the person said without quoting his exact words, we call it indirect speech, which can also be called as reported speech. In written form, we use inverted commas. In indirect speech, we don't use inverted commas. For example, look into the sentence. Anna said, "I'm very hungry now." Look into the inverted commas and look into the tense. How do you transform that into indirect speech? You can say, Anna said that she was very hungry then. Closely observe the changes in the grammar items. First, the pronoun I is changed to she. Obviously, it's because Anna is a girl. Look into the verb. The auxiliary verb am is changed to was, whereas the adverb now is changed to then. On the whole, when the reporting verb is in the past tense, all present tenses of the direct speech are changed into the corresponding past tense. Look into few more rules. A simple present tense becomes simple past when we convert it into indirect speech. Like, for example, in a sentence, he said, "I am ill." And when we transform it into indirect speech, you can say, he said that he was ill. Second one, a present continuous tense becomes past continuous. For example, He said, my friend is drawing water from the well. How do you transform this into indirect speech? He said that his friend was drawing water from the well. Third one, a present perfect tense becomes a past perfect. Like, for example, she said, I have passed the examination. You can say in indirect speech, she said that she had passed the examination. Go through these rules. What happens to tenses? In direct speech, if the sentence is in simple present tense, then when it comes to indirect speech, it becomes simple past. Similarly, present continuous tense becomes past continuous in indirect speech. Simple past becomes past perfect. Present perfect becomes past perfect. And the changes in the use of modals that determine the tone of the sentence. For example, in future tense, the word will becomes would, can becomes could, have to becomes had to, and the imperative becomes to, it adds to infinitive. So as we just remember, the modal shall of the future tense is changed to should or would, and the modal will of the future tense is changed to would or should. In grammar, as a rule, the simple past in direct speech becomes the past perfect in indirect speech. For example, Rani said, the cat died at night. When you transform it into indirect speech, Rani said that the cat had died at night. Hope you're following the changes in the tenses. Look into this table. In direct speech, if the sentence is in simple present tense, he said, I live in the city center. When you change it into indirect speech, you can say, he said he lived in the city center. Similarly, the other examples, if the sentence is in present continuous, like, he said, I'm going out. You can say in indirect speech, he said he was going out. If the sentence is in present perfect tense, for example, he said, I have finished. Then in indirect speech, you can say, he said he had finished. Similarly, present perfect continuous. For example, he said, I have been studying a lot. You can change it as, he said he had been studying a lot. If it's a simple past tense, he said, I arrived before you. He said he had arrived before you. If the sentence is in past perfect, for example, he said, I had already left, then things won't change. He said he had already left. The tense doesn't change. If it's a simple future tense, he said, I'll be there at 2 p.m. You can transform it by saying, he said he would be there at 2 p.m. Similarly, he said, I'm going to call Alan. You can transform it as, he said he was going to call Alan. Some more transformations that happen in some words who express nearness in time or place, and they transform as words expressing distance. For example, now of the direct speech becomes than in indirect speech. Similarly, here, there, ago, before, thus, so, today, that day, tomorrow, the next day, yesterday, the day before, last night, the night before, and so on. If there are questions in direct speech, how do you change them into indirect speech? When we report questions, that is, when we change them into indirect speech, we introduce the indirect speech by verbs like asked, inquired, queried, and so on. Look into the example. Where do you study? Asked the old man. If you change this sentence into indirect speech, you can say, the old man inquired where I studied. Did you understand? Similarly, when we report commands or requests, the indirect speech is introduced by verbs expressing request or command. For example, Madhu said to Rakesh, go away. So you should bring in the tone of the command in the indirect speech. Madhu ordered Rakesh to go away. Right? Similarly, how do we report exclamations and wishes? We report exclamation and wishes by introducing verbs expressing exclamation or wish. For example, God help me, he cried. I will never drive fast again. So how do you change this into indirect? You have to add the tone of the direct dialogue. You can say, he called upon God to help him and he resolved that he would never drive fast again. Right? So, by now, I think you are familiar with the rules of transformation. Have you noticed that the tenses of verbs undergo a change into their past tense forms? Because indirect speech is the report in absentia. You meet somebody in a market, there the direct speech happens. Suppose you go home and report what happened between you and your friend to your brother at home, then the tense changes, isn't it? But there is an exception. The tense doesn't change when a sentence refers to a universal truth that doesn't change. For example, sun rises in the east. Earth is round, so on and so forth. Have you observed that questions in the reported speech become statements? Let's move on to multiple choice questions on direct and indirect speech. Look into the first one. Where do actual words of the speaker occur? Choice A, indirect speech. B, reported speech. C, direct speech. D, none of the above. What we have learned, we will just revise through multiple choice questions. So, what is the answer to the question? Where do actual words of the speaker occur? Did you get? The answer is direct speech. Let's move to the second question. Which is the reporting verb? Carefully look at the choices. Mother, mistress, noun, suggest. Isn't it very easy? The question is asking you to locate the verb. So all the first three aren't verbs at all. So the answer is suggest. Let's move to the third question. Where are inverted commas used? Indirect speech, commands, direct speech, requests. What is the answer? It's direct speech. Let's move to the fourth question. In indirect speech, tomorrow becomes that day, the next day, the day before, yesterday. What is the answer? The next day. Let's move to the fifth question. In direct speech, a present perfect tense becomes dash. Past perfect, past continuous, simple past, none of the above. What is the answer? It is past perfect, right? So that's for now. The reference books used in the preparation of this lecture are Spectrum 1, the prescribed textbook for first semester BBA, published at Hyderabad by Orient Black Swan Limited in the year 2019. Then there are 3 more books used. Intermediate English Grammar, 2nd edition, written by Raymond Murphy, published by Cambridge in the year 1999. The other book is A Practical English Grammar, 4th edition, written by Thomas A.J. and A.V. Martinet, published by the Oxford in the year 1997. Then a book titled Essentials of English Grammar and Composition by Agarwal N.K., published at New Delhi by Goyal Brothers in the year 2017. Thank you.